London, 1813. The soft glow of candlelight flickered against the drawn curtains of a modest townhouse on the edge of Mayfair, long past the hour when respectable households had extinguished their lamps. Inside, bent over a swath of midnight blue silk, Miss Juliana Kent's nimble fingers worked tirelessly, her needle rising and falling in perfect rhythm. She paused only to brush a stray auburn curl from her forehead, inadvertently leaving a smudge of chalk upon her pale skin. Another late night, Jules, her younger sister Maria asked, appearing at the workroom door in her nightgown. "You'll ruin your eyes, and then where shall we be?" "Where we always are, dear sister, making our way as best we can," Juliana replied, inspecting her precise stitching. "Lady Harrington's daughter requires this gown for tomorrow's assembly, and the payment will cover our rent for another month." Maria sighed. "If Mother could see us now?" "If Mother could see us now, she would be pleased we've survived," Juliana said firmly, returning to her work. "Now, to bed with you. Dawn comes early, and someone must appear respectable enough to receive callers and new commissions." After Maria departed, Juliana leaned closer to her work, focusing on the intricate beadwork that decorated the bodice. The gown would be beautiful, perhaps her finest work yet, but it was not the creation that occupied her thoughts as the night deepened. Rather, it was the knowledge that soon, the first pale fingers of dawn would stretch across the London sky, and she would once again need to retreat from the world. Such was the life of a seamstress with a secret. ******, Quincy, you cannot possibly mean to attend another of those tiresome events," Lord Pembroke drawled, lounging in an overstuffed chair at White's Gentlemen's Club. "Lady Harrington's assemblies are notoriously dull affairs. Last year, I counted 17 young ladies who fainted from sheer boredom." His Royal Highness, Prince Quincy Kensington, second son of the King, raised an eyebrow at his friend's exaggeration. 17, Pembroke? I recall only 2, and one was clearly overcome by your excessive application of cologne." The surrounding gentlemen chuckled as Pembroke clutched his chest in mock offence. "Mock me if you must, Your Highness, but one cannot escape the truth that you've attended every social function this season. The betting books are filled with wagers on which fortunate lady will capture your interest. Even my mother has begun plotting your downfall into matrimony." Quincy took a measured sip of brandy. At 28, he was well aware of society's expectations. As the spare prince, he had certain duties, chief among them making an advantageous match. "Perhaps I simply enjoy the company," he replied non-committally. "Nonsense," Lord Chamberlain interjected. "You've been searching for something, or someone, with remarkable dedication. Your eyes scan each room as though conducting an inventory." Quincy's expression remained impassive, though his friends had come closer to the truth than he cared to admit. For 3 months, he had indeed been searching, ever since the night of the winter solstice ball when he had danced with a mysterious woman in a mask of silver and blue. She had vanished before midnight, leaving behind only the memory of intelligent conversation, sparkling wit, and the most extraordinary gown he had ever seen, a creation of silver-embroidered midnight blue that seemed to capture the night sky itself. "I assure you, gentlemen, my attendance at these functions is merely a duty to the Crown," he said, rising from his seat. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have correspondence to attend to before tonight's assembly." As he departed, Lord Pembroke called after him, "Do try to look less like a man on a mission, Your Highness. It gives the matchmaking mamas far too much hope." Oh, Jules, look at this!" Maria exclaimed, bursting into their small breakfast room with the morning newspaper. "Lady Harrington's assembly is mentioned in the society pages. Everyone of consequence will be there tonight." Juliana carefully buttered a slice of toast. "Including Lady Harrington's daughter in the gown I delivered this morning, before sunrise, I might add." Was she pleased? Her lady's maid was. Lady Caroline was still abed, naturally. Juliana tried to keep the bitterness from her voice. Once, the Kents had been among the gentry, not grand, but respectable. Before their father's investments had failed and consumption had taken both parents within a month of each other, Juliana might have been attending such assemblies rather than sewing gowns for them. Maria sat down, her expression turning serious. "Jules, how much longer can you maintain this schedule?" Working through the night, delivering gowns at dawn, sleeping during daylight hours, it's taking a toll on you. Juliana reached across the table to squeeze her sister's hand. It's the only way, dearest. If the ton knew their gowns came from the hands of a fallen family's daughter, they would find another modiste instantly. Our anonymity is our livelihood. But surely there must be. A knock at the front door interrupted them. Moments later, their housekeeper, Mrs. Timms, entered with a calling card on a small tray. A messenger from Kensington Palace, miss, she announced, her eyes wide with astonishment. Juliana's heart stuttered. Kensington Palace? There must be some mistake. No mistake, miss. The man's wearing royal livery. With trembling fingers, Juliana took the card. In elegant script, it requested the presence of the proprietress of Moonlight Creations at Kensington Palace at her earliest convenience, signed by the private secretary to His Royal Highness, Prince Quincy. What does it mean, Jules? Maria whispered. How could the prince know of your business? Juliana shook her head, mystified. I cannot imagine. I've never made anything for the royal family. Will you go? Juliana glanced at the clock. Nearly noon, she had only been asleep for a few hours after working through the night. I must, she decided. One does not refuse a royal summons, even one so politely phrased. But Maria, what if someone has discovered our circumstances? The sisters exchanged worried glances, both thinking of the carefully constructed facade they had maintained, the respectable Miss Kents by day, with Juliana transforming into an anonymous seamstress by night, creating the most sought-after gowns in London without ever being seen in society. I'll accompany you, Maria declared. We shall face whatever comes together. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Prince Quincy paced the length of his private study, pausing occasionally to glance out the window toward the palace gates. When his secretary had reported success in locating the mysterious dressmaker's shop based on the distinctive style of a gown he had described, Quincy had acted impulsively, something most unusual for a prince trained from birth in the art of careful diplomacy. Your Highness, the Mrs. Kent have arrived, announced his butler, interrupting his thoughts. Mrs.? Quincy questioned, having expected only the dressmaker. 2 young ladies, sir. They present quite a respectable appearance. Show them in. Quincy positioned himself near the fireplace, assuming a casual pose that belied the strange anticipation he felt. The door opened, and 2 young women entered, one fair-haired and youthful, the other. The other made him forget, momentarily, the proper greeting for visitors. She was tall and slender, with rich auburn hair arranged in a simple but elegant style. Her gown was modest but impeccably tailored, showing an understanding of fashion that few possessed. But it was her eyes that captured him, intelligent, wary, and the precise shade of the summer sky at dusk. Your Royal Highness, both women curtsied deeply. Quincy recovered his composure. Miss Kent and Miss Kent, I presume? Please, be seated. He gestured to the chairs arranged near the fireplace. Thank you for receiving us, Your Highness, the auburn-haired woman spoke, her voice melodious but guarded. I am Miss Juliana Kent, and this is my sister, Miss Maria Kent. The pleasure is mine, he replied, studying Miss Kent's face. There was something familiar in her features that he couldn't quite place. I must apologize for the unexpected summons. I understand you are the proprietress of Moonlight Creations. A flicker of something, alarm, crossed her features before her expression smoothed. Yes, Your Highness. Though I confess to some surprise that our humble establishment has come to royal attention. Humble it may be, but your work is exceptional, Quincy replied. I recently observed a gown at the winter solstice ball, midnight blue with silver embroidery resembling the night sky. Upon inquiry, I was informed it was your creation. The sisters exchanged a quick glance that did not escape his notice. You are most kind, Your Highness, Juliana said carefully. May I ask the purpose of your interest in our establishment? Quincy smiled. Direct and forthright, qualities he admired. My younger sister, Princess Eleanor, celebrates her 18th birthday next month. The celebration will include her formal presentation to society. I wish to commission a special gown for the occasion." Relief visibly washed over both women, though Quincy noted that Miss Kent's posture remained alert. "We would be honored, Your Highness," she replied. "Though I must mention that our workshop operates on an unusual schedule. We accept commissions through my sister during daylight hours, but the actual creation happens primarily at night." "So I have heard," Quincy said. "Most intriguing. Perhaps you could enlighten me as to why." Juliana's chin lifted slightly. "Trade secrets, Your Highness. A modest business such as ours must maintain some mysteries to compete with more established modistes." Quincy found himself smiling genuinely for the first time that day. Few people spoke to him with such candor. "Very well, your secrets remain your own, for now," he conceded. "Regarding Princess Eleanor's gown, I had hoped you might visit the palace to meet with her, perhaps show some designs." "I regret that would be impossible," Juliana said firmly. "We never conduct fittings or consultations at night, and during daylight hours, I am indisposed." "Indisposed?" "My sister means," Mariah interjected smoothly, "that our business divides responsibilities. I handle all daytime affairs, while Juliana oversees the creative work at night." Quincy's curiosity intensified. What seamstress worked exclusively at night? And why did both sisters seem so tense beneath their polite exteriors? "Perhaps a compromise," he suggested. "If Miss Mariah could consult with Princess Eleanor regarding her preferences, and you, Miss Kent, could create preliminary sketches. I assure you, my sister cares only for the quality of the gown, not the circumstances of its creation." After a moment's hesitation, Juliana nodded. "That would be acceptable, Your Highness." "Excellent." Quincy moved to his desk, writing briefly on a card. "This will grant you access to the palace for future consultations. And regarding payment, we can discuss terms once Princess Eleanor has approved the designs," Juliana interrupted, then colored slightly at her own boldness. "Forgive me, Your Highness." "Nothing to forgive," he assured her, finding himself charmed by her directness. "I look forward to seeing what Moonlight Creations will design for the princess." As the sisters rose to depart, Quincy made a decision. "Miss Kent, Miss Juliana, might I have a private word before you go?" Alarm flashed across her face before she composed herself. "Certainly, Your Highness." After Mariah had stepped outside with the butler, Quincy approached Juliana, noting how she tensed slightly. "Miss Kent, I cannot shake the feeling that we have met before," he said quietly. "Have you ever attended Lady Darlington's winter solstice ball?" Her eyes widened fractionally. I fear Your Highness is mistaken. Someone of my station would not be invited to such an event." "Your station?" he questioned. "I was given to understand that Moonlight Creation serves the highest members of society. Creating gowns for society is not the same as being welcomed within it, Your Highness," she replied, a hint of bitterness coloring her tone. Quincy studied her face more intently. "The woman I met was wearing a silver mask, but her eyes, they were remarkably like yours." Juliana took a step back. "Many women have blue eyes, sir. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must return home. Daylight hours are difficult for me." As she curtsied and turned to leave, Quincy called after her. The masked lady spoke of constellations, Cassiopeia in particular. She described the pattern of stars as resembling a W in the northern sky. Juliana froze momentarily but did not turn around. "How interesting, Your Highness. Good day." As the door closed behind her, Quincy smiled to himself. The lady might deny it, but he was now certain Juliana Kent, mysterious nocturnal seamstress, was also the captivating woman who had vanished from the winter solstice ball. And he intended to discover why. He knows, Mariah. Somehow, he recognized me. Juliana paced their small sitting room, her usual composure shattered. "I never should have attended Lady Darlington's ball." "It was foolish, reckless, it was your birthday," Mariah reminded her gently. "After 3 years of working every night, you deserved one evening of enjoyment." Juliana collapsed into a chair, pressing her fingers against her temples. "And now I may have ruined everything we've built. If word spreads that Moonlight Creations is run by the disgraced Kent sisters, we are not disgraced," Mariah interrupted firmly. "Father's investments failed, but he paid every debt before he died. Our circumstances changed, but our honor remains intact. Society does not make such fine distinctions," Juliana sighed. "A gentlewoman does not work with her hands. The moment our clients discover that their precious gowns are created by someone who was once their equal." "The prince didn't seem concerned with such matters," Mariah observed. "In fact, he seemed quite interested in you." Juliana scoffed. "Don't be ridiculous. Prince Quincy is merely curious about the masked woman who discussed astronomy with him at a ball. Once he confirms his suspicions, that curiosity will fade." "And if it doesn't?" "It will," Juliana said firmly, rising from her chair. "Now, I need to sleep if I'm to begin Princess Eleanor's designs tonight. Wake me at sunset." As Juliana retreated to her bedroom, drawing the heavy curtains against the afternoon light, she couldn't help but recall her encounter with the prince at Lady Darlington's ball. She had attended on impulse, wearing one of her own creations and a silver mask that concealed half her face. For one magical evening, she had stepped back into the world she'd lost, and found herself engaged in conversation with a handsome gentleman who, only later, she discovered was Prince Quincy. They had talked of stars and poetry, of philosophy and art. Not once had he asked her name or family connections, seeming content simply with her companionship. But as midnight approached, the hour when she would need to return home to begin the night's work, she had slipped away without explanation. Now he had found her, and Juliana feared that everything she had sacrificed to build their new life might crumble beneath the weight of royal attention. *****, you've commissioned a gown from whom?" Lady Harrington's voice carried across the assembly room, causing heads to turn. "Quincy, darling, surely you jest. Moonlight Creations is an establishment of mysterious origins. No one even knows who creates the gowns." Prince Quincy maintained his pleasant expression despite the unwanted attention. "I assure you, Lady Harrington, I have personally met the proprietress. Her work is exceptional. But for Princess Eleanor's presentation, only Madame Delacour would be appropriate," Lady Harrington insisted. "She has dressed royalty for decades and produces gowns indistinguishable from 100 others," Quincy replied dryly. "My sister deserves something unique." Lady Harrington leaned closer, lowering her voice. "There are rumors about that establishment, you know. Some say the seamstress is a fallen woman who cannot show her face in society. Others claim she is disfigured, hence working only at night. People will always create explanations for what they don't understand," Quincy replied diplomatically, though internally he bristled at the malicious speculation. "If you'll excuse me, I believe Lady Caroline is signaling for another dance." As he crossed the ballroom, Quincy's gaze was drawn to a young woman in a lavender gown near the refreshment table. Miss Mariah Kent stood chatting amiably with several young ladies, her manner perfectly at ease. No one would guess that she was not simply another debutante, but rather the public face of a dressmaking business that supported her and her sister. On impulse, Quincy changed direction. "Miss Kent," he greeted her with a bow. "What a pleasant surprise." The young women around Mariah fell into immediate curtsies, their eyes wide with astonishment that Prince Quincy had addressed someone in their circle. "Your Highness," Mariah's curtsy was graceful, her composure admirable. "Indeed, I had not expected to encounter you this evening. Are you enjoying Lady Harrington's assembly?" he asked conversationally, aware of the avid attention their exchange was receiving. "Very much, sir. The music is exceptional." "And your sister?" Quincy inquired casually. "Does she not care for dancing?" A flicker of concern crossed Mariah's features. "My sister is otherwise engaged this evening. Working, perhaps," he suggested, keeping his tone light. "She keeps unusual hours," Mariah replied carefully. Quincy nodded, understanding the delicate game they were playing. "A shame. I had hoped to continue our conversation from yesterday. He glanced at the nearby young ladies, who were failing spectacularly at pretending not to listen. Princess Eleanor was most pleased with the preliminary sketches she received this morning. Mariah's expression brightened genuinely. I'm so pleased to hear it. Jewel, that is, my sister was concerned they might be too unconventional. On the contrary, their originality is precisely what impressed her. Quincy bowed slightly. I shall not keep you from your friends any longer, Miss Kent. Enjoy your evening. As he walked away, Quincy heard the burst of excited questions directed at Mariah. His brief acknowledgement had just elevated her social standing considerably, and by extension, potentially brought unwanted attention to her mysterious sister. He hadn't intended that consequence, but perhaps it was not entirely negative. After all, royal patronage could transform the fortunes of any business. If Moonlight Creations became fashionable enough, perhaps Miss Juliana Kent might find herself in a position where she need not hide away at night. Unless, of course, there was another reason for her nocturnal habits entirely. The thought had occurred to him more than once since their meeting. Her pallor, her obvious discomfort in daylight, her strict adherence to working only after dark, these details suggested a condition he had read about in medical journals, a rare sensitivity to sunlight that afflicted perhaps one person in tens of thousands. If his suspicion was correct, Juliana Kent was not merely eccentric, but physically unable to function in daylight. And that changed everything. Juliana knotted her thread and snipped the excess, examining the bodice of Princess Eleanor's gown with critical eyes. The design was bold, perhaps her most daring yet, incorporating elements of classical Greek styling with modern sensibilities. The fabric, a shimmering ivory silk, would complement the princess's coloring perfectly. A soft knock at the workroom door interrupted her concentration. Enter, she called, expecting Mariah returned from Lady Harrington's assembly. Instead, Mrs. Timms appeared, her expression apologetic. Begging your pardon, Miss Juliana, but there's a gentleman caller. Juliana frowned. At this hour? It's nearly midnight. Yes, miss. I told him as much, but he was most insistent. Mrs. Timms lowered her voice. It's the prince, miss. The needle Juliana had been holding clattered to the floor. Prince Quincy? Here? Now. In the flesh, miss. Waiting in the parlor, he is. Juliana glanced down at her work attire, a simple muslin dress covered with a large apron, both bearing traces of chalk and thread. Her hair was loosely tied back with a ribbon, and her hands were stained with blue dye from an earlier project. Tell him I'll be there directly, she decided, hastily untying her apron. And perhaps bring some tea. After Mrs. Timms departed, Juliana made a futile attempt to improve her appearance. There was no time to change her dress or properly arrange her hair, but she removed the worst evidence of her work, washed her hands, and pinched her cheeks for color. Taking a deep breath, she made her way to the parlor. Prince Quincy stood by the small fireplace, examining a miniature portrait of her parents that hung above the mantel. He turned as she entered, and Juliana was struck again by his handsome features, the strong jaw, intelligent eyes, and the subtle warmth that seemed at odds with his royal bearing. Your Highness, she curtsied deeply. This is unexpected. Miss Kent. He bowed in return. I apologize for the lateness of my call. Most improper, I know. Most improper indeed, she agreed, remaining near the doorway. Without Mariah present, receiving a gentleman caller alone at midnight was scandalous, prince or not. I encountered your sister at Lady Harrington's assembly, he explained, and learned you were at home. I had hoped to discuss Princess Eleanor's gown. At midnight? Juliana questioned skeptically. A smile touched his lips. You must admit, Miss Kent, midnight seems to be your preferred hour for business. Despite herself, Juliana felt an answering smile forming. Touché, Your Highness. However, I cannot help but wonder if Princess Eleanor's gown is truly what brings you here at such an hour. Perceptive as well as talented, he observed. You're right, of course. I came because I wished to see you again, and because I have a theory I wanted to confirm. Juliana tensed. A theory? Prince Quincy took a step toward her, his expression softening. Miss Kent, Juliana, I believe I understand why you work only at night. Her heart began to race. Your Highness, you cannot tolerate sunlight, he continued gently. You suffer from a rare condition, xeroderma pigmentosum, I believe medical journals call it. Exposure to daylight causes you pain, perhaps even damage to your skin. Juliana stared at him, momentarily speechless. Of all the conclusions he might have reached, this was unexpected. I assure you, he pressed on, such a condition in no way diminishes my admiration for your talent and determination. In fact, it only increases my respect for what you've accomplished despite such challenges. Mrs. Timms chose that moment to enter with the tea tray, forcing Juliana to compose herself as the housekeeper arranged the service on a small table. When they were alone again, Juliana gestured to the chairs. Perhaps we should sit, Your Highness. It seems we have much to discuss. As she poured the tea with hands she fought to keep steady, Juliana considered her options. The prince had constructed a plausible explanation for her nocturnal habits, one that, while incorrect, might actually protect her true circumstances. Your theory is both thoughtful and compassionate, she said carefully, handing him a cup. But I'm afraid it's not accurate. His expression registered surprise. No? Then there must be another explanation for why a talented young woman chooses to work only at night, delivers her creations at dawn, and appears uncomfortable even discussing daylight hours. Juliana sipped her tea, buying time. There is, but it's not a medical condition. It's a social one. I don't understand. Setting down her cup, Juliana met his gaze directly. Your Highness, before my parents died 4 years ago, the Kent family was respected among the lesser gentry. We attended assemblies, balls, and musical evenings. My sister and I were being prepared for advantageous marriages. And then circumstances changed, he surmised. Drastically. My father's investments failed shortly before his death. He sold nearly everything to pay his creditors, leaving us only this small house and barely enough to survive a year. Mariah was 16, I 20. We had no male relatives willing to take us in, no fortune to attract suitors, and no training for any respectable occupation. So you turned to dressmaking, Prince Quincy said softly. Juliana nodded. I had always had a talent for design and needlework. But you must understand, a gentlewoman fallen on hard times may acceptably work as a companion or governess, but never in trade. The moment society discovered that Juliana Kent was creating their gowns, every door would close. So you created Moonlight Creations, he said, understanding dawning in his eyes. Working at night, sending your sister as your representative during the day. Precisely. Mariah maintains the fiction that she is merely the intermediary for a reclusive, anonymous designer. She can still attend social functions, still maintain the appearance of a gentlewoman of reduced circumstances rather than a shopkeeper. Juliana's voice took on an edge. It is an elaborate charade, but a necessary one. For your sister's sake, Prince Quincy observed. You sacrifice your own social life so that she might maintain hers. And for our survival, Juliana added pragmatically. The ladies of the ton pay premium prices for my creations precisely because they believe them to be the work of some mysterious, exotic dressmaker. If they knew they were commissioning gowns from a fallen gentlewoman, they would take their business elsewhere. Prince Quincy set down his cup and leaned forward. You underestimate the power of royal patronage, Miss Kent. If Princess Eleanor appears at her presentation ball in one of your creations, Moonlight Creations would become the most sought-after modiste in London, regardless of who wields the needle. Perhaps, Juliana conceded. But it would still change everything. Mariah would be known as a tradesman's sister, not a gentlewoman. And you could step into the light, he finished for her. Attend the events where your gowns are displayed, take credit for your extraordinary talent. Juliana shook her head. You make it sound simple, Your Highness. But 3 years of deception are not easily undone. They fell silent, the ticking of the clock on the mantel suddenly loud in the quiet room. Juliana realized with a start that she had just revealed her most closely guarded secret to the second son of the king, a man she had met properly only once before. "I should not have burdened you with this," she said finally. "My situation is of no consequence to someone of your position." Prince Quincy's expression turned serious. "On the contrary, Miss Kent. Your situation is of great consequence to me. I don't understand. Since the winter solstice ball, I have thought of little else but the woman in the silver mask who spoke so eloquently of stars and poetry before vanishing at midnight." His voice softened. "When I discovered that she was also the creator of the most magnificent gown at the ball, my fascination only grew." Juliana felt heat rising in her cheeks. "Your Highness, please," he interrupted gently. "Allow me to finish. When we met at Kensington Palace, I recognized your eyes immediately. The mystery of why a gentlewoman would become a dressmaker, why she would work only at night, intrigued me further. But now that I understand the truth, your sacrifice, your determination, your devotion to your sister, I find myself not merely intrigued, but profoundly moved." He rose from his chair and, to Juliana's astonishment, knelt before her, taking her work-roughened hand in his. "Miss Juliana Kent, I came here tonight seeking confirmation of a medical theory. Instead, I have found something far more valuable, a woman of extraordinary courage, talent, and character. I would be honored if you would consider allowing me to court you properly." Juliana stared at him in disbelief. "Your Highness, you cannot be serious. I am a dressmaker. You are a prince of the realm." "I am the second son," he corrected with a wry smile. "Destined never for the throne, only for duty to the crown. And in that duty, I am granted more freedom than my brother in choosing a partner. But surely you must marry someone of appropriate rank, a duchess, or at least the daughter of an earl." "I must marry someone who will bring honor to the royal family," he countered. "Someone of intelligence, talent, and strength of character. Someone, in fact, remarkably like you." The front door opened and closed in the distance, announcing Maria's return from the assembly. In moments, propriety would be restored with her sister's presence, and this extraordinary conversation would need to end. "Your Highness, Quincy," Juliana said hurriedly, surprising herself with the use of his given name. "This is too sudden, too unexpected. I need time to consider." He pressed her hand gently before releasing it and rising to his feet. "Of course. I have been impulsive, something most unusual for me. Take all the time you need." His eyes twinkled. "Though perhaps not 3 years of night work to reach a decision." Despite everything, Juliana laughed, a genuine, unrestrained sound that felt foreign to her lips after so long. "I promise a more timely response," she assured him, just as Maria appeared in the doorway, her eyes widening at the sight of the prince in their parlor. ****, he asked to court you." Maria gasped once Prince Quincy had departed. "A royal prince wishes to court my sister, the nocturnal Seamstress." "It seems as improbable to me as it does to you," Juliana admitted, collapsing onto the sofa. "I can scarcely believe it happened." "And you told him everything? About why you work at night, about our circumstances?" Juliana nodded. He had already guessed part of it. "He initially thought I suffered from some rare medical condition that made sunlight harmful." Maria began to laugh. "Oh, Jules! All this time we've been so careful, creating elaborate excuses for why you're never seen during the day, and he thought you were allergic to sunlight." Like some creature from a Gothic novel, Juliana agreed, finding herself laughing as well. Can you imagine? The mysterious case of the nocturnal Seamstress, who bursts into flames at dawn. Their laughter filled the small parlor, releasing years of tension in a moment of shared absurdity. When they finally composed themselves, Maria asked the inevitable question, "What will you do?" "About his offer, I mean." Juliana sobered. "I don't know. It seems impossible, a prince and a dressmaker. And yet, when you danced with him at Lady Darlington's ball, before you knew who he was, you came home with stars in your eyes," Maria reminded her gently. We didn't dance, Juliana corrected. We talked. About everything and nothing. He didn't once ask my name or family connections. He seemed interested only in my thoughts, my opinions. That sounds suspiciously like the beginning of a love story, sister dear. Juliana shook her head. Love stories are for people with choices, Mariah. We have built our lives around necessity, not romance. Perhaps until now, Mariah suggested. But his interest changes everything, doesn't it? Royal patronage, as he said, could transform Moonlight Creations from a secret endeavor into a celebrated establishment. And expose our deception to everyone who has commissioned gowns from us over the past 3 years, Juliana pointed out. Would that be so terrible? Father paid his debts. We have nothing to be ashamed of except working for our survival, which, I might add, many would consider admirable. Juliana rose and moved to the window, pulling back the curtain to reveal the night sky above London. Somewhere beyond the chimney smoke and lamplight, Cassiopeia hung in her celestial throne, the constellation she had discussed with Prince Quincy on the night they first met. It's not shame that concerns me, she said finally. It's fear. For 3 years, we have built this life, this business, this reputation. Changing course now, exposing ourselves to society's judgment, it's a risk. All worthwhile things involve risk, Mariah said softly, joining her at the window. You took a risk when you decided to become a dressmaker rather than a governess. You took a risk attending Lady Darlington's ball. Perhaps this is simply the next risk worth taking. Juliana turned to her sister, studying the hope in her young face. When did my little sister become so wise? Around the time my older sister started working through the night to ensure I could still hold my head high in society, Mariah replied, embracing her. Now, it's time for you to step into the light, Jules. Metaphorically speaking, of course, we wouldn't want the prince to think his medical theory was correct after all. *****. 2 weeks later, Juliana stood in Princess Eleanor's chambers, making final adjustments to the presentation gown. The princess, a lively girl of 18 with her brother's intelligent eyes, watched in the mirror as Juliana pinned the final details of the Grecian-inspired creation. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever worn, Eleanor declared. When I enter the ballroom in this, everyone will forget their stuffy protocols and simply stare. That is precisely the effect we hoped for, Your Highness, Juliana replied with a smile. After several meetings with the princess, all conducted in the evening, with Prince Quincy mysteriously absent, Juliana had grown fond of the young royal. My brother was right about you, Eleanor continued, turning to examine the gown from another angle. He said you were unlike any dressmaker in London, or any woman, for that matter. Juliana concentrated on adjusting the drape of fabric, hoping her blush wasn't visible. Since his unexpected midnight proposal to court her, Prince Quincy had maintained a respectful distance, sending only a single note expressing his hope that she was giving his offer serious consideration. Your brother is too kind, she murmured. Kind? Quincy. Eleanor laughed. He's many things, intelligent, dutiful, occasionally funny, but so kind suggests a blandness he certainly doesn't possess. No, he's quite taken with you, Miss Kent. I haven't seen him so animated in years. Before Juliana could formulate a response, a knock sounded at the door, and the subject of their conversation entered. Ah, the final fitting, Prince Quincy observed, his eyes immediately finding Juliana's. How fortunate that I happened to be passing by. Happened to be passing by for the 3rd evening this week. Eleanor teased. Brother, your sudden interest in my presentation gown is transparently not about the gown at all. Prince Quincy had the grace to look slightly abashed. You wound me, sister. I am merely ensuring that the Crown's investment is progressing satisfactorily. Of course you are, Eleanor said with an exaggerated wink at Juliana. Well, since you're here, make yourself useful. Tell us honestly what you think. Prince Quincy circled his sister slowly, examining the gown with a critical eye. It is exceptional. The draping suggests classical statuary, yet the overall effect is thoroughly modern. It will cause quite a sensation. As I told Miss Kent, Eleanor agreed triumphantly. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to speak with my lady's maid about the jewels I'll wear. I'll return shortly. As the princess swept from the room, leaving the door conspicuously open for propriety, Juliana found herself alone with Prince Quincy for the first time since his visit to her home. "You've been avoiding me," he said softly, moving closer. "I've been considering your offer," she corrected, gathering her sewing supplies to give her hand something to do. "As you suggested I should. And have you reached a conclusion?" Juliana met his gaze. "Not entirely. There are complications that concern me. Such as the fact that I am still, fundamentally, a tradesperson. Royal patronage may elevate my status somewhat, but it doesn't change what I am." Prince Quincy's expression grew serious. "What you are, Miss Kent, is an artist. Your creations are works of art that happen to be wearable. The fact that you receive compensation for your art makes you no different from a composer who is paid for his symphonies or a painter who sells his portraits. Society may not make that distinction," she pointed out. "Society will follow where the crown leads," he countered. "But more importantly, I don't care what society thinks. I care what you think. I care about your happiness, your comfort, your freedom to create without hiding in the shadows." His words touched something deep within Juliana, a longing she had suppressed for years, the desire to be seen, truly seen, for who she was rather than what circumstances had forced her to become. "There is one other complication," she said quietly. "Which is?" "I'm not certain I wish to stop working," she admitted. "Moonlight Creations has become more than a means of survival for me. It's a source of pride, of fulfillment." To her surprise, Prince Quincy smiled. "I would never ask you to abandon your work. On the contrary, I admire your dedication to it. Any arrangement between us would necessarily include your continued creative endeavors." "Arrangement?" Juliana echoed, raising an eyebrow. "Is that what you're proposing, Your Highness? An arrangement?" His smile deepened. "I'm proposing that we discover together what might be possible between a prince who finds court life stifling and a nocturnal seamstress who creates beauty in the darkness. Whether that leads to friendship, courtship, or something more formal, I leave that to time and mutual inclination." Before Juliana could respond, Princess Eleanor returned, effectively ending their private conversation. But as Juliana completed the final adjustments to the gown, she found herself considering Prince Quincy's words with increasing warmth. An opportunity to step into the light while continuing the work she loved. A chance to be valued for both her talent and herself. A possibility of something she had long ago resigned herself to never experiencing, a connection based on mutual respect and genuine affection. Perhaps Mariah was right. Perhaps this risk was indeed worth taking. The night of Princess Eleanor's presentation ball arrived with all the pomp and circumstance befitting a royal occasion. Kensington Palace blazed with light, carriages lined the drive, and the cream of society filled the ballroom, eager to witness the princess's formal entry into adult society. In a small antechamber, Juliana made final adjustments to Eleanor's appearance, her own heart racing with anticipation. This night marked not only the princess's presentation but also Juliana's first public appearance as the designer behind Moonlight Creations. At Prince Quincy's insistence, and with Eleanor's enthusiastic support, Juliana would be formally introduced as the creator of the princess's gown. The secret of her nocturnal work habits would remain private, but her identity as the talent behind the increasingly sought-after designs would become common knowledge. "Are you nervous?" Eleanor asked as Juliana adjusted the final fold of her gown. "Terrified," Juliana admitted. "I haven't attended a society function as myself in 4 years." "Yet you attended the winter solstice ball," Eleanor reminded her with a knowing smile. "Quincy told me all about the mysterious woman in the silver mask who disappeared at midnight. That was different. No one knew who I was then. And tonight, everyone will know." Eleanor squeezed her hand. "Take courage from that beautiful gown you're wearing. You are as much a work of art as any of your creations." Juliana glanced down at her own attire, a gown of deep blue silk that she had created specifically for this evening. Unlike her clients' gowns, which often featured elaborate embellishments, her own design was elegantly simple, relying on perfect tailoring rather than ornamentation to make its statement. "There," she said, stepping back from the princess. "You're ready to astonish them all." Eleanor examined her reflection one last time. The ivory silk gown with its classical draping transformed the young princess into a vision from ancient Greece, reinterpreted for the modern age. With her dark hair arranged in a simple style adorned with pearl pins, she looked both regal and approachable, exactly the impression they had hoped to create. "Miss Kent," Eleanor said formally, "you have exceeded all expectations. I shall be proud to announce you as my dressmaker tonight." "Thank you, Your Highness," Juliana curtsied deeply, emotion tightening her throat. A knock at the door announced Prince Quincy's arrival to escort his sister to her presentation. He entered, resplendent in formal court attire, and stopped abruptly at the sight of them. "Eleanor, you look—" He seemed momentarily at a loss for words. "Father and mother will be overcome." "It's all Miss Kent's genius," Eleanor replied, twirling once to show the full effect of the gown's movement. "Indeed," Quincy agreed, his gaze shifting to Juliana. "Miss Kent appears to have a talent for transformation." Juliana felt herself blushing under his appreciative gaze. "Your Highness is too kind." "Not kind," he corrected with a smile that referenced their previous conversation. "Merely observant." He offered his arm to his sister. "Come, Eleanor. Your moment awaits." As they prepared to depart, he turned back to Juliana. "I shall return shortly to escort you to the ballroom, Miss Kent. Unless you plan another midnight disappearance." "Not tonight," she promised. "Tonight, I remain until the final dance." The announcement of Miss Juliana Kent as the designer behind Princess Eleanor's presentation gown caused precisely the sensation Prince Quincy had predicted. Initially, there were murmurs of disbelief. The reclusive creator of Moonlight Creations was the daughter of the late Mr. Kent. The same Miss Kent who had disappeared from society for years ago? But as the evening progressed, as Princess Eleanor's gown drew universal admiration, and as Prince Quincy's attentions to Miss Kent became impossible to ignore, the tide of opinion began to shift. "My dear Miss Kent," Lady Harrington gushed, approaching where Juliana stood with Maria near the refreshment table. "I had no idea you possessed such talent. Why, my Caroline's blue gown for my assembly last month, was that your creation as well?" "Indeed, Lady Harrington," Juliana confirmed, marveling at how quickly the woman's previous disdain had transformed into fawning interest now that royal approval was evident. "How extraordinary! And to think, all this time you were working in secret, creating the most sought-after gowns in London. Such dedication to your art, to work through the night rather than during conventional hours." News traveled quickly through the ballroom. By the time Prince Quincy claimed Juliana for a dance, most of the assembly knew at least some version of her story, though thankfully, the details of her nocturnal work schedule had been discreetly reframed as artistic eccentricity rather than economic necessity. "You see?" Prince Quincy murmured as they moved through the steps of the dance. "Society adjusts its opinions quickly when royalty leads the way." "So it seems," Juliana agreed. "Though I suspect their acceptance has more to do with your obvious interest than with my dressmaking skills." "Then they are fools," he declared. "For while my interest in you is genuine and growing stronger by the day, your talent stands entirely on its own merits." As the music drew to a close, he did not immediately release her hand. "Would you walk with me on the terrace? There's something I wish to discuss with you." With Maria's encouraging nod from across the room, Juliana allowed Prince Quincy to lead her through the French doors onto the torchlit terrace. The night air was cool but not unpleasant, and the sky above was clear enough to reveal a scattering of stars despite London's ever-present smoke. "Look," he said, pointing upward. "Cassiopeia. The W in the northern sky, as you once described it." Juliana smiled at the memory of their first conversation. "You remembered." "I remember everything about that night," he said softly, turning to face her. "Just as I will remember everything about tonight, the moment when Juliana Kent stepped out of the shadows and into her rightful place." "Thanks to you," she acknowledged. Without your intervention, I would still be working through the night, delivering gowns at dawn, and hiding from my former peers. You give me too much credit, he demurred. The courage to change your circumstances was always within you. I merely provided the opportunity. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, gazing at the stars. Finally, Prince Quincy spoke again, his voice taking on a more serious tone. Juliana, these past weeks have confirmed what I suspected from our first meeting. You are unlike anyone I have ever known, talented, resilient, principled, and possessed of a sharp wit that continually surprises me. I find myself thinking of you constantly, planning my days around the possibility of seeing you, even if only briefly. Juliana's heart began to race. Your Highness, Quincy, please, he interrupted gently. At least when we're alone. Quincy, she amended, the name feeling intimate on her lips. I don't know what to say. These weeks have been like a dream, working openly with Princess Eleanor, being recognized for my designs, seeing you. Then perhaps this is the moment to decide whether the dream continues. He took both her hands in his. I promise to give you time to consider my offer of courtship. Has that time been sufficient for you to reach a decision? Juliana looked into his eyes, seeing there a warmth and sincerity that banished her final doubts. It has. I would be honored to accept your courtship, though I'm still not entirely certain where it might lead. A broad smile illuminated his features. That uncertainty is part of the adventure, is it not? But perhaps I can offer one certainty to begin with. To Juliana's surprise, Prince Quincy lowered himself to one knee before her, still holding her hands. I had planned a more gradual approach, he admitted ruefully. A proper courtship, followed by a formal proposal some months hence. But tonight, seeing you step confidently into society, watching how gracefully you handled every challenge, I find myself unwilling to wait. Quincy, she breathed, scarcely believing what was happening. Miss Juliana Kent, when I discovered why you worked only at night, not from some dramatic medical condition, but from necessity, courage, and sisterly devotion, I knew with certainty that you possessed the qualities I most admire. Would you do me the very great honor of accepting my hand in marriage, becoming my princess, and continuing your remarkable work in the full light of royal patronage? Tears sprang to Juliana's eyes as joy overwhelmed her. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you, Quincy. He rose and drew her into his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that promised a future neither of them could have imagined for months earlier. He, a prince seeking meaning beyond his title, she, a seamstress working in darkness to preserve what little remained of her former life. As they returned to the ballroom hand in hand, ready to announce their engagement, Juliana reflected that some transformations happened slowly, thread by careful thread, while others occurred in a single, breathtaking moment, like the night a prince discovered why the seamstress only worked at night, and offered his hand in marriage.